Come along with me as I begin prepping for the upcoming school year. After 7 years of homeschooling, I have come up with a method to prep for a new year that works well for me. I first start out by listing out the subjects for each child and decide based upon last year what we really need to work on. I then begin researching curriculum that I believe would work well for them, price it all out, and list all of that here on my list, keeping in mind to try to keep it as affordable as possible. I then begin ordering the curriculum piece by piece, and I start to list out how many lessons are included in each subject. Based upon the number of lessons, I then determine how many days per week we will do each subject. Then I start by creating a rough draft of a schedule. This year, we have chosen to do a block schedule so that each day will look a little different than the day before it. I will also list if there are any changing classes per semester. Later on, I will make a final copy, which will be a much better looking copy for each of my children to keep. Once I begin receiving the curriculum, I start a supply list of what is needed. I keep only one list, and that includes each of my children and every subject so that it's easier for me to just go right down the list and order what I need. Then I move on to organizing our first day of school. I type up what I need to discuss with my older kids, any changes in rules or discipline, and give them a brief overview of each of their subjects for the year. At that time, we also label and write their names on any folders and notebooks and make sure that they receive all of their new supplies that they need. So this is basically my way of making sure everything is covered and I don't forget to mention anything. Sometimes if a curriculum does not provide a daily lesson plan, I'll create my own. Here I am working on my daughter's baking and pastry arts class, dividing up each of the lessons over multiple days, and listing out what needs to be done so that she can follow it independently. I also printed the recipes she will be using ahead of time and put all of that in one binder so it's easier for her to follow. I then brought in my storage tote because I had some posters and some books that I plan on using this upcoming year. And I got busy hanging up my youngest posters and calendar. I did the calendar for the month of July because we actually planned on starting the last week of that month since we finished up our schooling earlier this year. My plan was to make this little area her calendar and weather corner, almost like a circle time area that we're going to start with every morning. I then selected the posters I was going to need for the year and set aside the ones that I hope to use later on in the year. And then next, I moved on to laminating. A bunch of visuals and name tracing sheets off of Teachers Pay Teachers, and I wanted to make sure that they were going to be reusable. One of our focuses this upcoming school year is for my youngest to continue tracing, but mainly learning to write her first and last name. We touched on it a little bit last year, but I really want to finalize it as she is getting older. When homeschooling a child with special needs, I try to keep an open mind and focus on the victories of what she knows and has already accomplished. I then take a little bit different of an approach with her than I do my neurotypical kids. Meaning for her, we focus on the next important thing for her to learn. And while I do that with my older kids, I also really try to keep them more on grade level. But with her, of course, the goal is meeting or exceeding grade level, but in more feasible steps. I'm also a lot more picky about what we choose to focus and spend our time learning. I have not finished buying her materials for the school year, but this is what I have so far. I found this visual schedule that I thought would be perfect for her. It was on Canva, but I tweaked it a little bit. We focused on 2 tasks for school every day last year. So this year, I'm hoping to stretch her to doing 5 tasks a day. This visual schedule is definitely something that's going to help her stay focused and know when a transition is coming. I used something similar to it last year, but like I said, again, we were only doing 2 tasks a day, so we're working our way up to doing more. I then, after this, began to sit down and organize some of her school materials And looking at everything on the table, I then decided the best way that I could organize this would be by subject. So that's what I started to do. I made some file folders for each subject, and I began filing away the workbooks and the worksheets together. Later on, I will definitely go through and put them in order and start getting more of a lesson plan together for her. But I feel pretty good about what I was able to accomplish this week. Again, this was done over multiple days. This was not done all in one day. That would be impossible. For her schooling next year, I'm really just focusing on a few main things, and that's handwriting, we're going to keep working with. We'll eventually get into more of like reading and spelling. She's going to actually start actual math other than just counting. And we're going to be doing some science readers as well. But for her, I'm basically just trying to keep things pretty simple. And I'm having to piece together her curriculum a lot more as opposed to my other kids, which even though they do kind of like a Mod Podge sort of curriculum set, we don't really do like an all in one curriculum, but I kind of piece together theirs as well. But hers is more so I find a bunch of workbooks, find a bunch of worksheets, and we do a lot more hands on experiments and exploring together and nature walks and that sort of stuff. Some other skills she will be focusing on is cutting and pasting, which we did some of that last year, but again, it's just something that we really need to reinforce and work on a little more. Again, tracing, handwriting, and eventually just like free writing. We're also going to dive a little more, like I said, into math and science more than we did last year. Last year was more of a focus on letter recognition, phonological awareness, whereas this year I hope to add in other subjects and expand. Thank you for joining me for this video. Next week, I will begin posting my choices of curriculum for each of my children. If that's something that you're interested in, don't forget to like and subscribe.